Hey everyone, and welcome back to Mindset, Motivation, Money. Today, we're going deep on something that could totally change your life. All right, so let's take a deep dive into honesty and introspection and how those can lead to mindfulness and personal growth.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah, we've got a really interesting mix of sources for this one. Books on mindset and personal development, and even some design thinking.
Oh, wow.
Plus, we've got some really insightful stuff from YouTube and other experts.
Cool.
Yeah, so get ready for some surprising connections
Oh,
because it turns out that facing those uncomfortable uncertainties head-on is where the real magic happens.
I like that.
Yeah. So one source that really hit me with this idea was the Mindset Mentor. And they were talking about how journaling is like holding up a mirror to your true self.
Oh, yeah.
And, people often think they know themselves,
Right.
but when they actually start journaling and they start asking those tougher questions, they realize there's a whole lot that they've been avoiding.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so it's about confronting those things that we typically try to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the real treasure lies.
I think that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, what are we so afraid of seeing?
I think that's a great question. And, it really ties into this whole idea of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset that Carol Dweck talks about in her book, Mindset.
Right.
Where a fixed mindset wants to believe that we're already perfect, or at least good enough as we are.
Yeah.
And a growth mindset embraces the idea that we're constantly evolving and that there's always room for improvement.
So if you have a fixed mindset, you're probably avoiding introspection altogether because you're afraid of what you might find.
Exactly. It's just easier to stay in that comfort zone and to just avoid those difficult questions altogether.
Right.
But when you have a growth mindset, you're actually excited by the prospect of self-discovery.
Oh, yeah.
And you understand that confronting your weaknesses is the only way to actually overcome them.
That makes a lot of sense. So where does honesty fit into all of this?
Well, you can't have true introspection without honesty.
Right.
It's about being brutally honest with yourself about your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors, even the ones that you're not proud of.
Right.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just a bunch of mental gymnastics trying to convince yourself that everything's fine when it's really not.
Exactly. And shift your perspective. Unlocking the power of a growth mindset really emphasizes this point. It talks about recognizing those limiting beliefs,
Oh, yeah.
which are basically the negative thoughts that we have about ourselves that hold us back.
Like telling yourself, I'm not creative or I'm not good with people.
Exactly. And those beliefs can really become those self-fulfilling prophecies if we let them.
Right.
But the book argues that by being honest about these limiting beliefs, we can then start to challenge them and we can create new, more empowering beliefs.
So it's kind of like taking inventory of all of that negative self-talk
Yes.
that's been running in the background of our minds.
Yes.
And then consciously choosing to rewrite that script.
That's a great way to put it. And this is where I think the concept of recasting comes in, which Carrie Johnson talks about in New Mindset, New Results.
Okay, tell me more about that.
So recasting basically involves taking those negative memories or experiences that we tend to dwell on and reframing them in a more positive light.
So instead of letting a past failure define you, you can look back on it, see what you learned from it, and move forward.
Exactly.
Use that knowledge to move forward.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging that even negative experiences can be valuable learning opportunities.
Right.
And by reframing them, we can prevent them from holding us back in the future.
It's about looking at everything as a learning experience.
Yes.
That makes me think about something that Dweck said about the importance of praising effort over ability.
Yes.
It's not just about being naturally talented. It's about being willing to put in the work and learn from your mistakes.
Absolutely. And I think that this ties back to honesty because it requires being honest about the effort that is actually required for growth. We can't just coast on natural talent. We have to be willing to actually put in the time and energy to develop our skills.
Well, think about Michael Jordan. I mean,
Okay.
he wasn't just born a basketball superstar.
Right.
I mean, he was incredibly dedicated to training and constantly pushing himself to improve.
Yeah, he's a perfect example of someone who achieved greatness through hard work and perseverance.
Yeah, and I think that's a really inspiring message
It is.
for all of us.
It is.
That, we're seeing this pattern here.
Yeah.
Honesty, effort, a willingness to confront those uncomfortable truths
Yeah.
is key ingredients for growth.
Absolutely. And another crucial ingredient is the ability to actually view mistakes as opportunities for learning.
Okay, I can see how that ties into the growth mindset that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
But how do we actually go about shifting our perspective on mistakes?
Well, first of all, we need to be honest about them.
Okay.
We can't learn from our mistakes if we're not willing to acknowledge them in the first place.
Right.
And Dweck actually gives a great example in her book. She talks about Jack Welch, the former CEO of General Electric.
Okay.
And when GE faced that major scandal involving Kidder Peabody, he
Right.
took full responsibility for the failure.
Wow, so instead of trying to sweep it under the rug or shift the blame, he owned it.
He did, and he used it as a learning opportunity for himself and the entire organization.
Wow.
It's a really powerful example of leadership and a growth mindset in action.
That's pretty amazing. So we've talked about journaling mindsets, reframing negative experiences, and embracing mistakes. What other tools or techniques can help us cultivate this honest introspection?
Well, there's a technique from the world of design thinking called the 5 whys.
Okay.
And it's all about asking why repeatedly to get to the root cause of a problem.
I can see how that would force you to confront some uncomfortable truths.
It can be challenging, but it's incredibly insightful because by persistently asking why, you're actually peeling back the layers and you're uncovering those assumptions and beliefs that might be holding you back.
Right.
It can be a real eye-opener.
Okay, so we're getting to the heart of it now.
Yeah.
We've covered kind of the what of honest introspection, but why is it so important for mindfulness and growth?
That's a great question. I think when you're honest with yourself during introspection, you're essentially cultivating self-awareness. You're becoming more mindful of your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions.
Like shining a light on those blind spots that we all have.
Exactly. And that self-awareness is the foundation for mindfulness.
Okay.
It allows you to observe your thoughts and emotions without judgment, which then creates the space for growth and change.
Now that you mention it, there's this activity in Think by Design called the empathy mirror that seems really relevant here.
Oh, yes. That activity encourages you to step into the shoes of your past self and understand the motivations behind your actions.
Interesting.
It's a really powerful exercise in empathy, even when you're reflecting on your own experiences.
So even if you made a mistake in the past, it helps you understand why you made that choice at the time.
Precisely. It's about acknowledging that you were doing the best that you could with the knowledge and resources you had at that moment.
Wow, that sounds like it requires a lot of vulnerability.
It does. And that's another key element of honest introspection is that courage to be open with yourself about your shortcomings.
Yeah.
You can't grow if you're not willing to acknowledge where you need to improve. You know, it's interesting. We've been talking about introspection a lot in the context of personal growth.
Yeah.
But these concepts are equally relevant, I think, in other areas of life, like our careers.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, Master Your Mindset talks about exactly that.
There does.
Michael Pillarset connects his personal journey of self-discovery
Right.
to his success in business.
Yeah. And he shares a pretty incredible story about sailing solo across the Atlantic.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, that experience of solitude and intense introspection led to some really profound insights for him.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. He talked about reaching a state of, like, mental emptiness.
Yeah.
Where he was completely present in the moment, just observing the wind and the waves.
Right. And it was in that state of stillness, free from distractions, that he was able to connect with his deeper self and gain clarity about his goals.
Makes me think about how hard it is to find that kind of quiet space these days.
I know.
We're constantly bombarded with information and demands on our attention.
Yeah, it's true. That's why, you know, having those dedicated practices like journaling or meditation can be so helpful.
Right.
They allow us to create that mental space for reflection and honest self-assessment.
And Pilarsit also talks about the importance of mentors, right?
Yes.
Learning from people who have already kind of navigated the paths that we're on.
Yeah, he mentions how valuable his father-in-law's guidance was to him.
Okay.
And having, you know, someone who had already achieved success in business share their experiences and insights helped him navigate his own entrepreneurial journey.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Mentorship provides that external perspective
Mm.
and maybe even some accountability.
Yeah, it does. But it also requires us to be humble enough to admit that we don't know everything.
Right.
And be open to learning from others.
Which, if we think back to what we were saying about mindsets,
Right.
that points right back to the growth mindset.
It does.
Being open to feedback and willing to learn.
Absolutely. Someone with a fixed mindset might actually see asking for help as a weakness.
Oh, interesting.
But a growth mindset sees it as a valuable opportunity to improve.
To get better.
Exactly.
One thing that really struck me in New Mindset, New Results, was Carrie Johnson's emphasis on aligning your values with your goals.
Yeah, that's such a crucial point. He argues that it's much easier to achieve success when you're pursuing something that genuinely resonates with your core beliefs.
It's about finding that deeper sense of purpose and meaning.
Absolutely. When your goals are aligned with your values, you're naturally more motivated and committed. It feels authentic, not like you're forcing yourself to do something you don't truly care about.
It comes from within.
Yes.
Johnson also highlights the importance of self-discipline and creating systems to support your goals. I
Yeah.
love that example he shared about the salesman who tripled his sales in just a few weeks.
Oh, yes. The one who was struggling until he implemented a reward-based system and broke down his goals into smaller, more manageable steps.
That's the one. It just shows you the power of having structure and accountability.
Right. It's so easy to get overwhelmed when we're facing these big, complex challenges.
hmm
But breaking them down and creating systems to track our progress helps us stay focused and motivated.
It's like that 12-step strategy outlined in Master Your Mindset.
Yes.
It provides a practical framework for setting goals, visualizing success, and taking consistent action.
Having a clear plan takes the guesswork out of it. And as we've been discussing, honesty plays a crucial role in each of these steps.
Right. You have to be honest with yourself about where you're starting, what your strengths and weaknesses are, and how much effort you're truly willing to put in.
Without honesty, the whole system breaks down. You can't set realistic goals if you're not truthful about your current capabilities, and you can't accurately track your progress if you're not honest about your effort and results.
Speaking of approaching challenges, strategically, Think by Design talks about using design thinking principles to solve problems in a more creative and human-centered way.
Right, and they introduce this really cool concept called divergent thinking, followed by discernment.
Okay.
It's the double diamond approach.
Okay, so walk me through it. What exactly does that look like?
So it's a fantastic framework for problem solving. The first diamond is all about expanding your thinking. It's about generating as many ideas as possible, even the crazy ones, without judgment.
So like brainstorming, just getting it all out there on the table.
Exactly. That's the divergent thinking phase. And then the second diamond is about narrowing those ideas down and selecting the most promising ones. That's the discernment phase.
So it's about going from a wide open perspective
Yes,
to a more focused one.
precisely. You start by exploring a vast range of possibilities, and then you hone in on the solutions that are most likely to be effective.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
So where does honesty come into play in this process?
I think it's essential throughout. During the divergent phase, you have to be honest with yourself about the problem you're trying to solve. What are the real needs and pain points? And then during discernment, honesty helps you evaluate which ideas are truly viable and have the potential for real impact.
Seems like a recurring theme is challenging assumptions and being willing to let go of ideas that aren't working.
Absolutely. A growth mindset embraces experimentation. It's about learning and adapting as you go, not about being right all the time.
Think by Design also emphasizes the importance of empathy in the design process.
Oh, yeah. They have a great activity for that called empathy mirroring,
Right.
where you try to step into the shoes of the person you're designing for, really understand their perspective.
So it's not about imposing your own ideas,
Right.
but taking the time to see the world through their eyes.
Exactly. It requires deep listening, asking thoughtful questions, and being open to perspectives that might be different from your own.
Which brings us right back to honesty, doesn't it?
It does.
Being honest about our own biases and assumptions so we can challenge them.
It does. We all have biases. Acknowledging them and seeking out diverse perspectives helps us create more inclusive and effective solutions.
I'm seeing this powerful connection
Me too.
between honesty, introspection, and taking action.
Yeah.
They're not just these abstract concepts,
Right.
but they're tools that we can use.
You're so right. It's like a continuous loop, isn't it? Honest introspection gives us greater self-awareness, which then informs our actions. Then we reflect on those actions and adjust our approach as needed.
Right.
It's a dynamic process, always evolving.
Yeah.
And the more honesty we bring to each stage, the more authentic and fulfilling our lives become.
So, as we're exploring all these different approaches to growth, one thing that keeps coming up for me is this idea of embracing mistakes as learning opportunities.
It's a fundamental shift in perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
Shift your perspective really dives deep into that.
Yeah, and they offer all these specific techniques for reframing mistakes, like practicing self-compassion and focusing on the lessons learned.
Right. It's so easy to just fall into that trap of beating ourselves up when we mess up.
Right.
But, that just reinforces a fixed mindset.
Exactly. Like we're afraid to admit that we're not perfect.
Yeah. But, self-compassion allows us to acknowledge our mistakes without judgment.
Right.
We can approach them with curiosity and a genuine desire to learn and grow.
I like that. It reminds me of that quote from Master Your Mindset.
Mm.
His mind offered him what he truly seeks. Many times joy, sometimes often a curse. It suggests that our mindset really does shape our reality.
I love that quote. It speaks to the power of our thoughts and beliefs. If we approach challenges with a growth mindset, we're more likely to find those opportunities for learning and growth.
Speaking of growth, new mindset, new results talks about developing a results-focused mindset.
Mm.
How does that connect to what we've been discussing?
Well, it's all about taking those insights and turning them into action.
Okay.
Johnson emphasizes setting clear goals, taking consistent action, and being willing to adjust your approach along the way.
So being flexible.
Yes, being flexible.
He's really big on creating systems to support your goals, too. Remember that example with the salesman who tripled his sales?
Oh, absolutely. Such a clear illustration of how powerful a results-focused mindset can be.
Right.
And it all starts with that honest self-assessment and a commitment to putting in the work.
Now, thinking back to Think by Design, I thought their concept of proto-personas was really intriguing.
Proto-personas?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They're essentially sketches of your ideal customer or user.
Okay.
A really valuable tool in design thinking.
And creating them involves a lot of empathy and observation.
It does. It's about putting yourself in the shoes of your users and understanding their motivations and pain points.
Yeah.
And that empathy mirror activity that we talked about earlier can really come in handy here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're combining that empathetic understanding with a results-focused mindset to create solutions that are both desirable and effective.
You got it. It's about meeting needs in a way that truly resonates with your audience.
Love it. And Think by Design also uses this really powerful metaphor of broken mirrors to represent challenging our assumptions and seeing things from multiple perspectives.
That's such a striking image. It's about breaking free from those limited perspectives and embracing a more expansive, inclusive way of seeing the world.
It seems like we've come full circle here. We started by exploring the importance of honesty and introspection, and now we're seeing how that honesty can lead to greater empathy, creativity, and impact.
Beautifully put. It all begins with that willingness to look inward, to confront our discomfort, and to embrace the journey of growth.
And Think by Design ends with this really inspiring call to action to create personal manifestos that reflect our values, our goals, and our commitment to growth.
They even offer that helpful acronym, MAMI-A, most advanced yet acceptable.
I like that.
Yeah, it reminds us to set ambitious goals, but they're still within reach.
It's about finding that sweet spot
Exactly.
between pushing ourselves and being realistic.
Exactly. And as we craft these manifestos, let's remember what we've uncovered in this deep dive. Embrace honesty, vulnerability, and a growth mindset. Approach challenges with curiosity and empathy. Celebrate the journey of self-discovery.
So what does all of this mean for you, our listener? Well, it seems like the path to mindfulness and growth starts with radical honesty, not just with others, but with yourself. We've explored a ton of tools and techniques, but the real work begins when you put them into practice. Journal, reflect, question those limiting beliefs, and don't shy away from discomfort. Cultivating that honest self-awareness is where true growth begins.
And remember, it's a journey, not a destination. There will be ups and downs, setbacks, and breakthroughs. But by embracing honesty and a growth mindset, you can navigate those challenges and emerge stronger, wiser, and more fulfilled. Keep exploring, keep growing, and keep shining your light on the world.